Welcome to Moravian Yankee, an ongoing documentary series about rebuilding a life in the Czech Republic after 60. 2 years ago, I spent a chunk of my life savings to move to the Czech Republic. I can tell you exactly what it cost me in dollars, in time, and in the amount of energy that I spent trying not to lose my mind. Moving abroad is not just about what it costs you in monetary terms. It's about what it costs you in time and energy and money. So buckle up, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. You're going to learn about everything that it cost us.
Moving 6,000 miles across the Atlantic had once seemed daunting. Standing beneath the heliosphere, giant representation of the sun, Miriam was beginning to feel she'd been insufficiently ambitious.
So, moving abroad only cost me $785. Wait, that doesn't sound right.
It wasn't.
To understand what it actually cost us to move abroad, I have to go back a little. Because we didn't wake up one morning and decide to move to Europe. We spent years trying to build a life in America that we wanted to stay in. We'd lived in our own homes in several suburbs before, but when it came time to downsize, I wanted something radically different. Apparently, so radically different that I was willing to drive an hour and a half one way to work, and then an hour and a half back.
Miriam has historically demonstrated a willingness to inconvenience herself considerably in pursuit of a good idea. Whether the idea remains good afterward is a separate matter.
So I moved to downtown San Diego, right in the gas lamp district. And honestly, it was fun. It was exciting. Ellie had been going to the Art Institute, returning to something that she'd loved since childhood. So she moved in with me, and I got to design this downtown industrial loft that I'd always sort of been dreaming of having. We were near the beach. There was always something happening. A lot of life happened there. But then there were the cons, especially as we got older. At first, the noise didn't bother us. The nightlife didn't bother us. Then I had to rent a parking space and a garage across the street. I'd had my own garage pretty much my entire adult life. Suddenly, my car lived somewhere else.
This was regarded as an unacceptable separation.
And San Diego traffic started getting to me. Then some of my coworkers, several married to firefighters and fire chiefs, started talking about how high the ladders could reach on the buildings downtown. 4th floor maybe. I lived on the 11th, and that information stayed with me. Sometimes the city would shut off power because they were working on pipes or electrical systems underground. No power meant no elevator. 11 flights of stairs. And I remembered 9/11. Those images started going through my head again. So eventually, we moved. Again. Next was Mission Valley. 2nd floor. Beautiful place. Everything was nearby. We thought, okay, maybe this is it. But California was still California. And life was expensive. So we tried again.
There is a pattern developing.
We bought a fixer-upper in a 55-plus community. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, a car garage, $250,000. Everything seemed to go in twos. And beginning around 2019, we put in over $100,000 remodeling it. We were trying to make it our dream home because we thought, maybe this is where we're going to stay forever. And when it was finished, it was beautiful. But then we started noticing things. People were dying. I mean, they were old, and that's what happens. But we were on the young end of that community. I was only 59. And we just kept looking around thinking, We didn't want to die there. Not like that. The neighborhood was quiet. Our mortgage was only around $1,000 a month. But there was no life. There were no kids playing. There was no mixture of generations like we'd been used to all our lives. And everything else kept getting more expensive. Heating, cooling, groceries, healthcare. I had excellent health insurance through my retirement package, but I kept thinking about what would happen if something truly catastrophic happened. Especially to Ellie. She would be partially covered under my plan. Meanwhile, Ellie was still in her early 50s. She wanted to be productive. She had a master's degree, university-trained language professor. She couldn't even find part-time work as a cashier or a store clerk. And we started seeing ageism in a way that we hadn't really experienced it before. And eventually, we started to have a different conversation. What if we left? What if we went back to Ellie's home country, the Czech Republic? And that's when we started adding up what it would really take to do it. What do we do with a house? What do we take? What do we leave behind? How do we get our stuff across an ocean? And what happens with my residency? What's this all going to really cost?
The answer, as it turns out, was quite a lot.
Anyway, I think the actual conversation went something like this. Now, Ellie, investors, thank you for taking this meeting. As you can see from this graph, it starts here and it goes up.
That's just a triangle.
It's a growth triangle.
It's not labeled.
Confidence is kind of a label. Now, for an initial investment of, let's say, everything we have,
Everything we have,
you receive equity in a life. Abroad, with me.
I already have that.
I know, that's why this should be an easy yes.
The investors accepted the deal. They had, it should be noted, no other choice.
First decision, we weren't ready to sell the house, just in case we would come back. And so we rented it for a year. We already owned a small studio apartment in Czechia that Ellie had, just so we could visit family and friends and so that she could keep her permanent address on file with her country. So we did have somewhere to go. I then started doing research and I found Management One, property management company. They take care of large multi-unit luxury apartment complexes and residential homes. And so we chose their largest management package because the whole point of the whole thing was that we didn't want the headache of managing a rental property from Europe. Initially, they wanted us to put down $10,000. They make any repairs that the house needs to be ready for rent, which, we had just remodeled the house, but of course, they're always going to find something, right? So they require you to put $10,000 down and keep it on file in case there's repairs throughout the year that they have to do. And they'll hire a contractor, or I can hire a contractor, and it'll come out of that. Now, I don't regret that one. They dealt with everything. They took care of all complaints or minor repairs, and the money came into our account like clockwork every month. They screened the renters. Any problems became somebody else's problem. Worth it. Then we bought plane tickets. One way. We picked a date like 1 year in advance. Tickets that could be exchanged but not refunded, because apparently we didn't trust ourselves to chicken out a couple times. $4,200. Then we went room by room. We had 3 categories of boxes: take, trash, or donate. When we were finished, we only had the boxes to take with us. We sealed the boxes, we closed the door, and we moved to the next room. When we finished the other rooms, whatever boxes were left, they went back into the room with the other take boxes, and the door closed. Eventually, everything that we were taking was all together. Everything else wasn't ours anymore. Some things went to our kids, some things were donated, a lot was thrown away. And some, the memorable things that we really wanted to keep, that went into storage. To start the storage unit was about $200. And then There was Auggie. Auggie couldn't travel in the passenger cabin, so we had to take him in cargo through Lufthansa. We added him to my ticket. That was about $550, just for his ticket. There's other costs. Then there was the international health certificates, the USDA certified wet signature ones. The timing requirements. You have to travel within 10 days of them officially stamping that paper. We had a death in the family and we had to change it once. That was about $250 for that change. And then he had to have all the required accessories that you see here for his crate in order to fly.
Auggie, who had contributed nothing to the planning process, nevertheless required his own administrative department.
Total $1,350.
For viewers contemplating international relocation with a canine companion, Miriam has documented the process in considerably more detail than was healthy. A link to her guide can be found below. She also has one on how to keep your US phone number without porting. She's offering it for free only until September 6th, 2026. Now back to her story.
And then came our stuff. We used unpacked, we ship. 1 full pallet and a half a pallet. They send you everything that you need. You build the pallet yourself. You seal it the way they exactly tell you, and then they come and get it. We paid for an additional $500 to have the European moving company that brings our pallet to unload our pallet and bring the boxes up to our house, because I didn't want to have our pallet sitting in the middle of the square. Maybe we're not here, and this gigantic pallet is outside the apartment building in the square. Because I didn't want a pallet that contained what remained of my entire American life sitting unattended in a square somewhere in Bern.
A reasonable concern.
Paperwork. My temporary residency application, apostilles, marriage certificate, diplomas, birth certificates. Basically, before I left America, I got everything I could think of apostilled. If I thought a Czech government official might ask for it, I had it apostilled. We did use a relocation company that helped with my temporary residency in the beginning, and that was $800 because I wanted to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. And there was a $2,000 courtroom fee when you turn in your temporary residency application. So, and about $50 worth of apostles. So I would say $950 for paperwork. I also needed private health insurance, specifically covering Czechia, and I added on Schengen because we like to go places. The health insurance came to about $1,500 a year, so $3,000 for 2 years. On departure day, we hired a private SUV to take us to the airport. Black Lane, highly recommend. I've used them several times when going to the airport because we had, 4 regular suitcases, 7 IKEA-style duffel bags, backpacks, camera equipment, pelican cases, a dog, and a dog crate. We were not going to take the bus. I put air tags everywhere. Inside the luggage, inside the camera cases, inside our wallets, inside our backpacks. Even Auggie wore one. I knew where that dog was at all times. They make you take their collar off, but I took his air tag and I taped it in the crate up under the mat that he had. That way I even knew when he was being loaded onto the same plane that we were on.
Auggie remained unaware that he had become trackable infrastructure.
Then there's the small stuff. There's airport food, $100, IKEA bags, duct tape, $50. Random things that I've probably forgotten, about $100. And Ellie's sister put about $30 of groceries in our refrigerator for us. Because after moving across the Atlantic, you still apparently need to have dinner when you arrive at night. So how much did it cost to move abroad? $30,315. That's what went out. But that's not the end of the money. See, we had 2 cars. We gave one to our kids And the second one was a BMW SUV. And at that time, we got very, very lucky because for some reason, the dealers were having a hard time. They were having trouble getting these particular cars. Mine was paid off. It was still pretty new, and they made me a great deal. They were desperate. $27,500 came back.
This presented an unexpected problem with the narrative.
I also tried selling things on Facebook.
What a waste of time.
The entrepreneurial venture had concluded.
Eventually, we got about $2,000 back from the management company.
So that brings us to a total of...
Miriam had successfully relocated to another continent, and, according to the accounting, it had ultimately cost her $785. This is why accountants generally discourage storytelling.
Now the money, I can calculate. The time, I can explain. But the energy, there's no spreadsheet for that. Only hair dye for how much you're going to age in the process. $30,315. That's the number. And that's what it actually cost us to get ourselves, our dog, and all the things that we decided mattered enough to keep across the ocean from California to Czechia. And 6 weeks later, our stuff arrived. Now, you may be asking me, was it worth it? Abso-fucking-lutely.
The sun on my